Hello and welcome everybody to another podcast of the Ground Effect Racing League. This week we were at the Algarve Grand Prix at Portugal in Portimao. One of the tracks that the F1 game has given us, even though it's not at the actual F1 calendar. It was round 13 for our season, so certainly um, a track that not many drivers were used to playing this game. Also, with the gap in tires, we obviously had the soft and mediums who were pretty close in pace, but the hards were 2 steps harder than the medium tires. So some drivers had to figure out which strategy was the best for them in the end. Like last time out, I'm gonna have Blade and Venicus with me. So we'll guide you through all the action that's gone on this week at Portugal. And like every week, we'll start with Division 1, and I would say we just head straight over. So in Division 1, we had Mark Souza winning the race in the end, just about ahead of Blade with less than half a second. Then we've had B Ford in P3, myself Atom77 in P4, Bourbon in P5 on his GRL return, Mizzy in P6, Snipes in P7, Delta in P8, Darnell in P9, and Teja Alex in P10, making it a double top 10 finish for Aston Martin after a while. In the driver standing, Snipes still leads the way with 189 points, and Ham on 164, who obviously dropped down to reserve now. Beeford then moves up into third position again with 160 points, and was Jack on 151. Blade then on 129 points in P5, with Radius on 97. Max Susan now on 84, so he's closing that gap down to Radius. Ghost Jr. on 54, Atom myself on 52, and Sora on 43 points, rounding off the top 10. In the Constructors' Championship, Alpine obviously still lead the way by a massive margin. They sit on 340 points. Then we've got Mercedes on 223, Alfa Romeo on 207, so they lose a position to Mercedes. So Ham's loss is already proving vital in this Constructors' Championship. Aston Martin then in P4 on 177 points, so this double top 10 finish was also important for them to stay ahead of McLaren, who sit on 164 points. Red Bull then on 125 points, and Ferrari on 125 as well. While Red Bull moves up, Ferrari have dropped a position, same as Haas, who sit now on 117 points in P8. Williams in P9 on 105 points, and AlphaTauri on 25 points, gaining a few more to make their season look a little bit happier. Well, I mean, Blade, you were once again involved in the fight for the race lead and the race win. What was your point of view really with that battle on Mark? Because you were clearly the two quickest drivers on the track this week.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it was a good race from us both. I think we managed to. I think he qualified on pole. Obviously, I was in P3, and yeah, I think Welshcheck was P2, and he started on the hards, which yeah, at least in Division One, a couple people knew that the hards was not the way to go at Portugal. So me and Mark started on the mediums. Welshcheck and Snipes, who were 2 and 4, started on the hards. So I was able to get past Welshcheck pretty quickly, and yeah, we pretty quickly gapped the rest of the field. I think Atom U climbed up to third position
At the first
at one point, yeah, with the mediums as well. So yeah, it was pretty much me and Mark were in a little gap to you and Snipes. I think Welshcheck got caught up in an incident. So I don't remember too much, but
yeah, I believe that was rather the second stint or end of the first stint. I think with Gibson,
oh yeah,
because Jack got overtaken on track from Snipes. I remember that because We were talking about Snipes actually making quite aggressive move on his teammate. So I think that was a bit late in the stint, but yeah, over to the last stint on Mark versus Blade.
Yeah, so well, there was this. There was so Mark pitted, I think, lap 19, something like that, and I was going for the overcut because I didn't think I could beat Mark on pure pace. Which, I mean, looking back at it, I don't know. It could have been close, but I think Mark was a little quicker than me. But I think I managed my ERS a bit better. So it would have been interesting, but there was a safety car after he'd pitted, so I inherited the lead, obviously, with slightly fresher tyres, which helped me out. I think I had a little bit more pace, but Mark managed to hold on to the DRS, and as our tyres both degraded, I think it leveled out a bit more, and our pace was pretty similar to what it was before, where he was slightly quicker. And I think we both saved our ERS up for the last lap, and uh, basically burned it all down the start finish straight, and it was just probably about 150 meters too long. Mark passed me into turn one, and I got a run on him into turn four, but didn't quite get the traction. And yeah, he took the win. So yeah, he played it very smart, and obviously, as usual, he was very quick. So it was a good, fun battle. Obviously, would have preferred it if I came out on top, but you know, I'd take another P2 any day of the week. So, uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
fastest lap as well. So that's the 4 points deficit to Mark, and yeah, Mark is certainly not going to pass in the championship for the well-being anyway. So there's still a solid gap to him, and you're rather looking forwards anyways. I mean, we talked about the tires earlier that I said the hards are quite a bit harder than the other two compounds, especially this weekend. I mean, Avenicus, you also raced in Division 2. I believe you had a full dry race. What was your opinion on the tires? Did you touch the hards or did you just stay away from them?
I was actually about to check the stream just in case I did run the hard because I've actually forgotten. Um, I don't think many people ran the hards, but there were a few who trialed them. They definitely. I don't know. I can't really remember their pace, to be honest with you. Um, I'm
Can't
just
think
checking
that bad,
now.
man. You can't think that slow because we probably remember. Yeah, I mean,
My memory is horrible.
I think. What do you think, Blade? I think the hards were just off the start really bad, weren't they? I think I think over the time that as it should be, the delta got reduced, but I think when you started on the hards and you were like actually looking good, usually on pace to pick up a win or a podium. I think the Hearts were not the play, were they? Or would you say that they were certainly an option in that race?
yeah, no, I think they were, you know, especially in Division One, where you know, 1 second can basically change your race completely. Well, probably anyways. You know, any pace advantage you can get will help you out a lot. So, um, I think those who started on the hards, unless they had very strong pace, like I think Snipes had very strong pace. I think if he chose the right strategy, he might have been able to keep up with me and Mark. But yeah, it wasn't the play, and I don't think for us especially. I think the only reason you'd want to go on the hards if there was like a lap, I don't know, lap 5 safety car, or
Yeah,
maybe even before that.
yeah.
And you tried to go to the end because
I mean, it
I
was
think
weird,
yeah,
wasn't it? Because if you look at the two teams that are currently fighting for the drivers, I say constructors as well, but technically there's not really a fight for the constructors lead right now. But if you look at Alpine and Mercedes, like Mercedes had myself on the mediums starting from like P6 7, and Beeford started on the softs from P8, but then you had the two Alpines, I think in P1 or 2 and P4. with Welsh Jack and Snipes, and they both opted for the hards. Like if you because Welsh Jack obviously was second in the championship at that point, and Snipes was first. And when you see that the other two have switched to a softer tire compound, wouldn't you think? When you've really not run the hard tires, which they seemingly have not done at that point, because otherwise they probably have not chosen to start on them. When you think you probably would opt for softer tire than just to remain track position, because it's not a secret, is it, that Portugal usually is not the kindest when it comes to dirty air.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult, really. Obviously, these guys could have practiced, but because I think generally on this game, hard medium is the safest strategy. So, even if they practice, they probably likely practiced that kind of strategy. And obviously, unless they'd heard the hards are really bad, you don't want to use them. They're probably not going to know. So, yeah, uh, I don't know. I think, of course, maintaining track position is important, but
Not at all.
if that were the case, yeah, if every single race would start on the softs, and
Yeah.
it's just not the quickest strategy sometimes. So
It happened.
I think
We saw some whole division almost starting everyone on the soft. But, yeah, you're correct. I mean, you probably compromise your starting position always a little bit, like not your starting, the outcome of your start, but it's basically very crucial if you only lose one position to a non-hard runner. Then I guess, yeah, I think they were just thinking about the championship. Probably, you might be correct there. But before we end off Division 1 here, and once again, we talk about the tires, because I think there were a very big topic this weekend. And as said, with the gap between the hards and the mediums, did you like the gap between the tire compounds to know like a soft medium could actually work? Like, would you like those kind of weekends more often, or the hards actually clearly slower, so you have to basically actually think about the strategy, like what could I do to avoid the tire, or is a two-stop maybe possible, which wasn't it here. But for example, if it was a track like Mexico where the hards were so slow, they'd probably do a two-stop. Do you like those kind of weekends? Well, it's only one right now, but what's your opinion on them?
Yeah, well, I think it's good, obviously, to have a different strategy. Because, obviously everyone's going to try and pick the quickest strategy unless maybe they don't quite have the pace and are gambling on something different. But I think for me personally, I don't really care whether we, use the hards or mediums. I think the most important thing is that you can have different strategies that work. For example, I think in an ideal world, you can make a medium soft medium, hard medium, all work, within a second finishing time. I think ideally you'd want that where any strategy, because really this weekend, if you were racing at the top division and you went for the hard medium or even the hard soft, because the hards were so bad, you'd be at a clear disadvantage. So I think it was good, to have a different strategy, but like in the end, how different is medium soft to hard medium? It's just the color of the tire, really. So I think it'd be nice if there was more of a reason to, potentially use the hards other than them being a tire that can, if there's one safety car right at the start of the race, you can carry them all the way to the end. So, I think hopefully maybe in future games, they can make any strategy more viable. But then again, that's also not the most realistic. So we'll see. But maybe if you could have something where you could change each tire's tire wear rate or something complicated like that, you could make a very interesting race. And also, if it was a two-stop as well, where the hards were that bad that no one would go onto them, but you couldn't do a one-stop without them, that would definitely be very interesting. But I don't think there's a track like that on this game. I might be wrong though, but yeah.
No, two stops are still like I think they're possible at times because they're only like almost at a minute, a couple of seconds slower, 2 or 3 at some tracks, but it's not like that it makes the two stop the better strategy. I mean, I think the only track I could think of for the actual pace, like the delta time, is better on a two stop is Vegas. And Vegas tends to have the odd safety car. So, well, let's say safety cars, because I think you usually have more than one. But yeah, we saw that, for example, in Division 3, where Rennicus pitted for the softs for the last 2 laps, and Booster stayed out on his mediums, and he gained back a whole pit stop. So, yeah, I think if we could get a couple more tracks like that, that would certainly spice it up, because you would not, as a championship contender leader, you would not have to. You can't rely on your qualifiers, I should say, that much, because as soon as you get a good quali position and you're kind of decent in the race, you probably stay there or thereabout. But if you actually have to think of what the others are doing, then that is where it gets really complicated. But yeah, we've wasted now almost 15 minutes for Division 1. I guess we move over to Division 2, where we actually had a different winner when we crossed the line and after the penalties, because Rob Kelly won the race from P1, while Hypes actually crossed the line first but got a post-race penalty, so he finished P2. Legend then came third, he started P10, and Jamie Hobbs in P4 with the fastest lap from P7. Amos Partick then in P5 with Beatty Jordan in P6, Jobbo in P7, so the McLarens with a good qualifying from P2 and P3, but not the best of races. Avenicus on his debut then started P12, finished P8, with Savage Cabbage in P9 and Amos Lloyd, the Welshman, in P10 in the end. Looking at the driver standings, after his DNF, Shente Bars still leads the championship, obviously. He's more than 50 points ahead, pretty much. Shente Bars leads with 210 points. Then we've got Hobbs on 164, Jam remaining on 144, Dylan Baxton 123 points after missing this weekend. We've got Amos Cole on 108 points, Jim still on 98, Slappers as well stays on his 78. We've got 3 cars then rounding off the top 10 on 77 points, with Beatty Jordan, Hypes, and Savage Cabbage. So they are really close together, with Partick and Lloyd just behind. In the team standings, Mercedes lead the way still with 324 points, Huston on 205 in P2, and Alfa Romeo on 188. Ferrari on 179, McLaren on 172, moving up 4 positions. So despite only P6 and P7, those points have certainly helped them out a treat. Alpha Tauri then in P6 on 166 points, Red Bull on 156, so the two Honda-powered engine cars drop down 1 position each. Alpine then on 143 points, with Aston Martin on 141, and Williams round off the table with 43 points, almost 100 points off Aston Martin in P9, and I think those 2 points are needed in the overall constructors for that battle for P9. Well, as said, the stewards were busy. We had a wet qualifying on intermediate tyres, but yeah, in the end of the day, it was Rob Kelly. I mean, Blade, we talked about it last week. Shente, not at, well, Shente obviously was on the top of this game for the whole season, but now it seems like momentum has switched a little bit for a second to Rob Kelly. He's now won. You reckon he's one of those drivers that could potentially pick up some solid points to get himself up into the top 10 at least and have a good end to the season? Well, he's just now joined because, we know Rob Kelly from the odd league race. He's quick, he seems committed. I mean, that's basically what Division 2 needs at this point, a bit of fire.
Yeah, definitely. He's had a good first two races in Division Two this season, the second and first. So yeah, obviously, if he continues to race in continues to turn up in Division Two, I think I've been pretty impressed by his two appearances so far. Um, yeah, like you mentioned, Gentabar's not having the best race. Hopefully for his sake, it's just a one-off. But I think for us, we'd be more than happy for
You
him
can
to
have a
let a couple
holiday.
other drivers win. Yeah. Uh, um, yeah, obviously, certainly, I think Rob Kelly will. But from what I've seen so far, anyways, he'll be right there. Any opportunity is given to well, at least get a podium or even win a couple races. So yeah, we'll see how his season plays out. But if it continues as well as it started, then yeah, I think he's in for a good campaign.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, before I head over to Venicus, I mean, it's quite well, how should I put this? It's either funny or sad or a bit of a coincidence. The Types has been a Williams full-time driver until now, pretty much, and because of apparent uh not inactivity really, he got dropped. Now he reserved for Mercedes. He won a track, got P2. I mean, well, Williams are on the run, aren't they?
Yeah, let's just say Hypes did not believe in the Williams project.
Oh dear. Well, I mean, there was a debutant obviously in Division Two, as said. I mean, Avenicus, you had your first round in Division Two after being promoted. Started P12, as said, were pole for split 2 seconds and 1200. And then P8 in the race. How was that first race for you? Do you think the pace was alright compared to the others, or do you think there are still a couple of spots where you really lack pace to some of the others?
I think that I'm on the pace, but at the same time, I just need to clean up some of my races. I think I got a couple penalties that race because of track limits, and I dropped a position to one of the McLarens at the end of the race. But I'm I'm happy with where I was in that race. My goal was to be around the middle of the points, and that's where I was. So I think it was. I enjoyed myself. I think the only thing I should have done is not started on the hards. As you mentioned in Division One, I just checked the stream. I started on hard, did a one stop, went hard medium.
Well,
So
we know
just a bit
what to
of
do
a
next season.
yes, just a bit of a wrong strategy from me there. But
I
I
mean,
think the pace was good. The pace was good, and I think with some more clean racing, then I'll be definitely higher up there. Especially considering the fact that I was on pace with Jordan and Jobo, and keeping up with everyone around me, even on the hards at the start of the race. There was VSC as well, going into turn one. The two Ferraris just decided to absolutely kill each other for no reason. Um,
well,
and that caused a virtual safety car. On the restart, I somehow managed to get past absolutely everyone. And
that's
then because of the tire deficit from the hards, everyone got back past me anyway. So yeah, maybe if I wasn't on the hards, it would have been a bit of a different story. But we move.
yeah. I mean, you still gain positions even though you started on the hards, and I guess the mediums overall in the second stint were usually a quite good tie around here. But
Mm,
as you mentioned, I mean, BOT, Jobbo, Will, Blade, and me know how washed the man is, but BOT Jordan, you said he won his pace as well. I mean, he's a BOT main team driver. Um, you can't get much higher when you join Division Two for the first time, I guess, because Jordan has had a couple of podiums, I believe, one or two this season, and also a pole, I believe. So he's certainly one of the top drivers. I think Blade and me both can agree on that. So. Yeah, I mean, you're helping out Alpha Tauri still. I guess that's what you wanted to at least stay at the same team. With Particles, who got a good teammate, I guess, who can pick up a couple of solid points for sure. But yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. I mean, on the virtual safety car restart, from what I've seen, there also was some carnage going on. I think Hypes hit Jobber, which in the end got him the penalty. But yeah, I mean, in Division 1, as we mentioned, it was dry all the way. Well, you had a wet qualifying. How was that? Portimao in the wet, is that something you want to experience again in your life, or have you just checked it on your to-do list and you don't want to do it anymore?
I mean, Portimao anyway, when you get it right, is a very fun track, I think. But in the wet, it's definitely more of a challenge, as with most tracks as well. I think the key to qualifying there was timing it right, and I went out a bit too early. Didn't fuel for long enough for the right period to get a good lap in. But a lot of people did that, as we saw with Genta as well, because he qualified all the way down in P14. He qualified behind me. So yeah, it's a bit that I'd like to do it again. That was good fun, but at the same time, I think if there was one thing I'd do next time, it's just time it right.
Yeah, that's usually the one to go, isn't it? In the when the wet quali, when it dries up the track. I think you started on full wets as well, that qualifying, all of you. So it must have really dried up quite quickly. So it's always hard to time, isn't it? It's usually the last one across the line is the one with the best chance and the best track conditions. So yeah, it's pretty much a roll of the dice, really. But as said, overall, I think a good first weekend in Division 2, and good points for Alpha Tower as well. I mean, as Blade and me mentioned before, the driver standings are not the most interesting ones, but at the constructor standings, it mirrors really. Mercedes is leading by a mile, but then it's really close. I mean, Blade, looking at your McLaren team, I mean, they finished P6 and P7, so they've dropped both 3 to 4 positions in the race, but they've gained 4 positions. This really sums the last 2 weeks up how close it is, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think McLaren Div 2 is. Well, I think we have a very strong lineup there. Obviously, team owner Jobo and Jordan. I think they're both pretty quick on their day. So yeah, as you mentioned, obviously, sixth and seventh probably doesn't seem like the best result, but they've still moved up 4 positions. So, like you say, it's very close. I think if they finished where they qualified, there'd be a couple more positions higher as well. Maybe even P3 challenging for P2. So, yeah, obviously, hopefully for us, they can get a good result in the coming races and potentially challenge for P2 in the standings. I think Mercedes are a little bit too far away, so yeah, we'll let them have this one.
How nice McLaren is to people that are delivering their engine and not letting them. I'm sure
Wow,
will be
we're just as nice as McLaren are to Mercedes in real life at the moment, so you know.
Well, so that's Division 2 done. So let's move over to Division 3, where it was Owl who won at the Portuguese Grand Prix, with TIR Hayes in P2 and Lawn in P3. Then we've got Michael in P4, Boosted in P5, Maka in P6, some Pikachu in P7, Basha in P8, Bright in P9 on his debut in Div 3, and Yasin in P10 with the fastest lap of the race, while Basha, who finished in P8, picked up pole position with a 1:16.278. In the driver standings, Avenicus, who's been promoted, still leads the way with 196 points, while Michael moves up to P2 now on 162 points and Boosted on 156. Maka on 118, Shumbash on 106, Lawn on 99, some Pikachu on 93, Apex on 74, moving up 3 positions, while Yasin sits on 71, Kami on 62. In the Constructors' Championship, same pictures the last 2 weeks. AlphaTauri remain at the top of the table with 345 points. Red Bull then in second on 243, but just about staying ahead of Mercedes on 236. So the Silver Arrows are certainly trying to at least pick up second place here. Ferrari then on 182 points, with Alpine on 139. Alfa Romeo on 116, Aston on 108, McLaren on 93, Williams on 78, and Haas on 72. I mean, if you look at this championship, over to Venicus again. I mean, you said last week pretty much you think Michael has got the edge on Boosted, especially when it comes to pure pace. He's passed him now in the championship, and that's only happened really because Boosted actually would have finished ahead of Michael, but he just completed a push to pass in the last sector on him. I mean, so you've left and they've decided to start war on each other. I mean, so you remain at the top by quite a big margin. I mean, last sector collision when you're in a championship fight and you still have almost 10 rounds to go is quite interesting, isn't it, to watch from your perspective now?
Well, they both know how close it is, and you can see how close it is as well. 6 points separate them after Portugal, so it's literally, it could go either way depending on penalties and lots of other different factors. But as a viewer, I would absolutely enjoy this. It's like Hamilton Verstappen 21 all over again, to be honest with you. And they both know how close it is at the top, so they're going to be pushing for absolutely every inch they can get.
Sure, yeah. And I mean, we've got the great thing about this is we've got a Verstappen and a Hamilton, as you said, but luckily we don't have a Bottas and a Perez who are miles off, because Maka is there or thereabouts. I think he needs a breakthrough weekend. He had a great start to the season. He was leading the championship, then didn't turn up for about 3 races, which hurt his championship. As Basha, we both said, if he can nail it, he might be the quickest in this tier. And also talking to Blade the other day, Lawn, out of nowhere, ahead of some Pikachu now as well, who is actually the defending champion, you would say, if you include season 3.5 from last game, and then the 2 Ferraris. I mean, yeah, it's really interesting, and also Blade looking at this. We have always said it's AlphaTauri versus Red Bull if it's an actual championship fight in the constructors, but Maka has returned now, and Lawn has suddenly started driving faster. I mean, that's certainly playing an interesting part in this championship, either drivers or constructors, isn't it? Because now it's not only the Red Bull drivers and Boosted, really. It's now also the Mercedes drivers coming slowly into it. And I think for the last half or third of the season, that's going to probably play a slightly more interesting factor.
Yeah, well, I have faith in the lawnmower, you know. So, yeah, obviously, it's interesting. I forgot who Boosted's replacement was, or rather, I wasn't really listening. But
It's not too important. He's left again.
well, I was going to say I assume that doesn't matter too much, because if you're talking about Red Bull or Mercedes catching AlphaTauri, then probably they wouldn't be very good. So, yeah, you know, I think I mentioned this last time. Still a big gap. They've got a bit of a cushion, so you know there's a lot of races still to go. That gap is certainly, if they only have boosted, and Red Bull and Mercedes maintain the current lineup, I think they're in a bit of trouble, but they've also got that many races to find a good second driver. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Obviously, Mercedes and Red Bull, despite having probably some of the better two lineups, those drivers do need to deliver week in week out because of that gap. So um, they're going to have to work pretty hard. Ferrari as well probably have to work even harder. But
Sure.
yeah, I don't think it's over.
Yeah,
There's a lot of rounds, despite the big gap. I think it could be quite an interesting one come the end of the season. This one, so I think keep an eye on this championship.
yeah, I mean, how did you tell me every podcast last season it's not over until it's fully over? And I think that basically proves in this division. I mean, yeah, I mean, looking at the gaps, it probably seems like we are overhyping this division a lot. But by what the racing is delivering, it's just showing slight moments of Division 4 last season. I just had every race a driver who comes out of nowhere suddenly performing. I mean, as said, we had Mack at the beginning of the season, has not won a race though. Boosted suddenly won at Vegas. Michael had the odd race win, but also mistakes like in Japan where he got a penalty. Then Ivanicus had his odd violence of destroying the whole grid. And Basha had good qualifying performance, and until last week, I think, every time he raced, he got a podium. And now, yeah, the lawnmower mowers is not only cutting grass but also down the championship lead. So that's certainly, yeah, very interesting to watch. And I
So
think,
to quickly add on that point, by the way, at the start of the season, you had Sonic Pikachu as well. He had 2 wins in a row, I think it was. One
oh
at
yeah,
Spain.
I've actually not looked that far down the order. Yeah, true, true. Yeah,
Yeah.
we had
So a couple early championship
Apex as
contenders
well.
that have
Also
dropped
won a
out.
race. Apex won at, I believe, Monza it was.
I
So yeah.
think Croaky won as well at one point.
Well, let me actually, because we're talking about
Extremely early.
yeah, so yeah, it has. Do you remember Blade, Division 4 last season? It certainly is something of that, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, let's just take Ivanicus out of the
Yeah,
equation because I think he has about 5 wins. But
I mean that's
yeah,
what.
it's exactly the same. If that,
It's like Jacob Brown, isn't it? Jacob Brown was in the Alpha Tower and instantly won a couple of races.
yeah, I don't think he was
It wasn't that
quite as
early, that's
strong
for
as
sure. No, not
Ivanicus,
that
but
early.
yeah, it was. I think Jacob Brand last season was the strongest and most consistent driver. I don't think he had that many wins though. So,
You know,
um,
this is why this podcast is so great because we can just check that.
yeah,
So
extend,
last
make the
season, Jacob
podcast longer.
Brown had 2 wins, and Yasin and Krigmit had 3. So
Yeah,
they
yeah,
had 11 winners in 22 races. They are now on 7. So we still have a chance because if
yeah, yeah,
Maka,
yeah.
Lawn, win races, also Ashim Basha, I mean, it's possible. We're getting there slowly. But yeah, so that's gonna be interesting. But yeah, we've talked about last season's Division 4, so I think we just crack on with this season's Division 4, where it was Sonic who won the race from the grid in P5. He actually had a quali ban, so figure that one out. Rayon West in P2, Ronnie in P3, so the two championship contenders, or P1 and P2 in the championship, both on the podium. Jesper in P4 with Quell in P5, Wargasm in P6 with Fastest Lap, Koi in P7, Pulsits and Nebrestrom in P8, Eagle in P9, and Tweaky Scorpion in P10, just ahead of Captain Daniel and Mighty J. In the driver standings, we have Raven West obviously still leading the way with 193 points, 20 points ahead of the promoted Bright. Ronnie then on 122 points, Captain Daniel in P4 on 109, Koi in P5 on 108, Jesper on 101 in P6, Sonic in P7 on 99, Aram James on 98, Quell on 91, and White Josh on 88, just ahead of Ayahuasca and Neb Restroom. So, looking at the team standings, we still have Mercedes leading with 312 points, but Alpine still keeping up nicely and slightly gaining at the other occasion as well of 242 points. Alfa Romeo move up into P3 on 197 points, and Red Bull 183. We've got Alpha Tauri 154 moving up the table as well. McLaren 144 slipping down by one. Ferrari then on 122. Williams on 112, same as Haas on 112, while Aston Martin dropped down to last on 104 points. So despite having more than 100 points, Aston Martin at the bottom of the table. So we talked about it last week. Promotion of Bright, it has happened now. And Raven West finished P2 with P7 in qualifying as well. I mean, his championship lead is massive. And of course, Ronnie, we both know, Blade, we both know Ronnie, how good he is. He can probably gain that gap back with a good momentum, good run of form. We also know Koyi, he was in Division 2 before. Jesper was in the ART esports team a couple of months ago as well. Sonic is doing well. We know Quell is a driver that is always there or thereabout when it comes to race wins. Neb Restroom in GRL itself is faster than Raven West actually. So there are a couple drivers that are certainly good enough, I would say, to beat Raven West in back-to-back races. But I think at this point, it's just Raven West is very consistent, and it seems like he's just riding that wave of momentum, isn't
he? Yeah. Obviously, good race. I think mentioned last time. Obviously, Bright getting moved up. Maybe he feels a bit less pressure. So he's I think he had a bit of a slump, but now he's performing again. So yeah, definitely a good race for him. Kind of, well, reminding everyone who the championship leader is. So, well, I mean, he didn't win the race, but you know. Um, but yeah, I think obviously he's got a pretty significant gap in the championship, and I think yeah, with how competitive this division is, I think he needs that because I think from here till the end, a lot of these drivers are going to be taking points off each other, and I think the gap is big enough to where, because it's so close in this division, he might be all right till the end. But obviously, early days still. So, like you say, Ronnie has been in GRL for a while. He's pretty much always been performing in whatever division he's been put in, pretty much. So definitely one to look out for. Jesper obviously had quite a good run recently, and yeah, Sonic followed the interesting strategy of giving himself a further 2 quali bans. So yeah, I think this is another one like in Division 3 where I feel like we could see. I don't know whether what it's been like before. Probably not as as many diverse winners as in Division 3, but I feel like from here on out we could see a lot of different winners all the way to the end, and it's always interesting when that happens. So let's hope that happens. But yeah, as far as the championship goes, I think Raven West is looking comfortable, but I don't think he should get too comfortable yet.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, for himself, he's dreaming right now because to have such a big lead in the championship, because there is a point where you almost cannot lose as many points, because losing around 80, 75 points needs certainly some skill, that's for sure. and some bad luck. Obviously, you have a buffer, but as you said, you can't just rest now and say I'm gonna easily win this. So yeah, they've also got a couple of winners. I said the promotion of Bright has really put a bit of a dent into this championship battle. So we'll just have to wait and see. Maybe Ronnie or Jesper. I think Jesper is probably, even though he's not the closest one to Raven West in the championship, he's probably the one who's the most likely to get close to him. And I mean, in bottom, like not bottom, in lower divisions, especially last season, we've experienced Ferrari drivers suddenly producing great results in the end of the season with Bright in the Ferrari. So maybe he's told Jesper as a bit of revenge to do exactly that and take the title of Raven West, which Bright couldn't do off Kieran last season. Yeah, I mean, Avenik, as I said, you were quite dominant in Division 3 as well. If you were now going into the last third of the season, really in the position of Raven West, how would you approach that? I think asked something similar last week. Like, would you just think like I need to win the next race and win again to just stretch the gap as much as possible, or would you just really wisely pick your moves? Like, do I really need to go from, for example, P5 to P4, or is that just not? How would you approach these situations? Because at the end, you're either gonna win it because you've been more careful, or you've just risked it, which was worth it as well.
His gap at the front is 71 points, so he definitely can afford a couple bad races, but at the same time, I think remaining consistent is the best way to go here. If it means sacrificing some places so to avoid an incident, then that would probably be the best decision if it were me. I never try and cause incidents, just anyway, but when it does come down to it, remaining consistent at this point, even with a 71 point gap, if you drop below like a fair margin, you are not going to gain that back in a while. So remaining consistent is the best play that he can do here.
Yeah, I think that sums it up nicely from someone who is actually also managed said to gain lots of points on his competitors before. I mean, it's in the midfield once again, very close in the constructors' championship as well. Your AlphaTauri drivers are doing well in Koyi and Ayahuasca, as we said last week as well, where Ayahuasca got that P3 after starting P15. I mean, he DNF this week, P7 only for Koyi, yet again started P16. So seems like qualifying is one of the main problems right now. While Ayahuasca actually qualified P3 this week. But Koi in general also seems to have not the best of qualifyings, and it looks like he generally is a bit of the better driver out of those two. Do you think Koi is also worth a shot if he has a good run? Because he's been league racing for years now as well. You obviously are not that close to him, but he's your team owner. Do you think he's one of the ones who can just step forward for the team and say like, he's now gonna take the fight right to Raven West, especially as he's been his teammate at the start of the season?
I do back Koyi. I think he's very fast driver, and I think that with like you said, if he can find a bit of form, he can absolutely challenge further up the field in the championship. Ayahuasca, he's down in P11 at the moment, 85 points, but he's not that far off at all either. So if either of them can find some form, I think it would do us all some good around the team.
That's for sure.
As we were mentioning last week about the overall constructors, it definitely helps us out.
In the fight against Alpine, I think that wasn't it? So yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting. I mean, as said, as a Raven West will obviously hope that it all remains the same, but I think us as neutral spectators, or not so neutral with AlphaTauri, it's for the best if this championship closes up rather quickly. Yeah, because Bright has not moved up to just give Raven West the title, has he? So, yeah, so we'll see what happens in this division. As said, driver standings and constructor standings, there's a quite big gap, like we've seen in a couple of other divisions. But in Division 2, we saw Shente Bar struggling. In Division 3, it's now pretty close because of Ivanica's promotion. So, yeah, we'll see. Maybe Raven West makes the odd mistake, and we can talk about a crazy championship battle in a couple of weeks' time as well. Now looking at the penultimate F1 division, which is Division 5. Cyntium got pole, Cyntium won, so that's I think 5 in a row for him, with Barbarino in P2 and Lexus in P3. So Great Britain, Brazil and Poland on the podium. Then we've got Daza in P4 with Button in P5. Don't worry, it was not Jensen Button in the Williams this time. Milkow in P6. Kevin on his debut in P7, Kieran in P8, 10th Cannon in P9, and Andrew in P10, with other points finishes in Kieran, Callum Ludlam, Jay Street, and DNFs for Freezy, Erna, and Octus. In the driver standings, Milkow remains in the lead of the championship with 149 points. Then we've got Andrew moving up 3 positions on 144. Behind him, we've got 10th Cannon on 136. Cyntium now on 133 and Lexus on 128, with Freeze on 124, Barbarini on 98 with a couple of good weekends now, McMessy on 95, Kieran on 89 and Daza on 85. In the team standings, Alfa Romeo remain at the top of the table with 414 points, while Haas sit on 385. So it seems to be between Alfa and Haas for now for the lead of the championship, while Ferrari sit on 338 and AlphaTauri promote themselves up into P4 with 331 points, while McLaren sit on 302. Mercedes then on 265 points, so certainly one of the worst divisions in Division 5, with Red Bull on 233, Aston Martin at 201, Williams on 196, and Alpine at the bottom of the table on 185 points. Well, Blade, every week we've got the same topic. Could you say Cyntium is having the best streak of races we might have ever seen, like since your end of season 3? Is that because I think this is basically even topping Shente Bars and Venicas' races, because he's not only winning the races, but he also gets all the poles.
Yeah, certainly. He's been doing a very good job. It somewhat reminds me more of Andrew's end to the season in season 2, where I think he won 5 in a row or something.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know whether he got pole in those because Andrew's not the quickest qualifier.
I mean,
but
I can imagine many things, but certainly not that.
yeah. So and well, funnily enough, they're in the same division now. So maybe well, I say maybe he was taking some tips from him, but they were in a different division beforehand, so and in a different team. Regardless, yeah, it's been impressive, and I think like some people in Div 5, they might be quick to jump and say Cyntium needs to be moved up or whatever, but I think we've discussed this at him, and even though he's been getting poles and the wins, it's not like he's been 10-15 seconds up the road each race. He's only been about 1 or 2 seconds ahead of P2, so I think certainly the drivers in this division are good enough to challenge him for the race win, but yeah, they just need to have a slightly better race and then they'll be ahead of him. So easier said than done. But yeah, regardless, he's been really good this season. So far, well, other than his DNFs, obviously, which are not ideal because he would have even more points. But yeah, I think he'll yeah, he'll probably have a lot of confidence right now. So he'll be looking to continue this. So yeah,
For sure, yeah. As you said, he had the DNFs at the start of the season, and now he's really racking up the wins. And well, I think he's really in a sweet spot because he's picking up win by win. He's not winning by miles, and as soon as he stays in his division, come round 15, he's going to stay there until the end of the season because. And we at the start of the season discussed when the cutoff is for promotions, and it is round 15. So soon as the clock says uh I can't remember exactly what day it is, but around 15 of season 4, nobody's gonna get promoted anymore. So yeah, if he ideally has one not too good race, I think he's in one of the best spots to win this championship as well. So it's gonna be interesting because with different characters, we've got Milk Cow, who's strong at the beginning of the season, but then made mistakes, got penalties and so on. So leads the champ. Then we've got Andrew, the indestructible machine from Scotland, who's just there with his horrific qualifying performances, but great race pace in the end. 10th Cannon as well. We talked about it. Not really the best in qualifying. The man who gained the most positions in all of the races this season. So he's probably going to be there or thereabouts. Cintium, great qualifying performances. That's the word I was searching for. And then we've got Lexus, Freeze, and Barbarania, who are a bit off, but as mentioned, they've done nicely this season. They've had good performances. They, I think, Lexus and Freezy had race wins. I don't think Barbarini has yet. So yeah, it's an interesting championship. Actually, if you look at it, it is a 6-way championship fight now, isn't it?
yeah. Hang on, oh, my phone has locked itself, which isn't great. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, if you look at
obviously,
the table, I mean, because we have 3 former Haas drivers, let's say, because we've got Milkow in the Alfa Romeo, we've got Andrew in the Ferrari, then the 2 Haas's now of 10th Canon Cintium, Lexus in the Alfa Tauri, Free was in the Haas now in the Alpine, and Barbarini in the Red Bull. I mean, that's just not only color-wise it's beautiful, but also for the whole championship, because it not only spices the constructors championship up a bit, but also, as said, 6 drivers in this championship now is just beautiful, isn't it?
yeah, it's always good to have you know, a driver from different teams all battling each other, 6 different people fighting for the title. You know, we could only dream about that in real Formula One at the moment. So,
Yeah.
but we have it
Six
here
people
virtually in
fighting for
Division
P7.
Five. So, yeah. So, yeah. Um, you know, with the points so close, it's just so unpredictable. Anything can happen week from week. Obviously, Cintium's on a great run of form, but Andrew is always consistent finishing up there. I think, Freezy was very quick at the end of, well, before the merge, so he might be up there again. Milk Cow obviously in the lead, but doesn't quite seem to have the pace of people like Cintium and at the moment. So, yeah, it will certainly be interesting to see what happens because yeah, I mean, looking at the table, you could just tell it's a spicy one. So
Yeah, for sure, definitely. I mean, also coming to Venicus's Alpha Tauri guys again. I mean, Lexus has now had his 4th podium, I believe, for Alpha Tauri, and if you look at this constructors championship, this is probably one of the ones that is the most important to your team because Alpine are last with less than 200 points, and you at AlphaTauri have almost got 350. So you've got a massive gap. Obviously, these are merged division, so 2 divisions points got added together. But do you reckon this is one of the ones where your team really has to extract the maximum out of it, maybe even more than, let's say, Division 1, because that basically it's over anyways. But here it's because it shows that Alpine are struggling and you need to take advantage of that.
I think that this is definitely one of the divisions where AlphaTauri's team shines compared to Alpine. Obviously with more than 100-point gap, and we're not that far off of P2 Haas either, only 50 points. So Lexus it seems to be an absolutely brilliant driver, especially with his current form. But let's not forget Alpine with who Alpine got in here?
Breezy, they've got now.
Yeah, Freezy, who's a championship contender.
And
So-
Radix, who is currently in P21, also 46 points, which is far off shocking.
In fairness, we've got both of our teams at the moment. We've got two brilliant drivers or one brilliant driver each that are definitely up there, both in championship contention, and they're definitely dragging our teams up there for their division. At least based on points wise at the moment, it seems. However, yeah, the pace at the moment for Lexus is unbelievable in this division, and I just hope that he can keep it going.
Yeah, sure. I mean, he's another Polish driver as well. It's good to see that this season, especially the drivers from Poland, actually decent in their divisions, like Michael in Division 3. I know that it's probably not what you're the most happy about. And Lexus in Division 5. I mean, Lexus had a break at the start of the season. I think we talked about that earlier in the year where, let's say at the start of the game, his standards were a bit questionable, but seemingly improved, not involved in any incidents. And hitting the ground running really with AlphaTauri, his new team. He started off with Mercedes. Now he wants to catch them with AlphaTauri. So that's certainly good to see that he's performing nicely. And yeah, talking about an interesting championship, I think we head over to the bottom division, which is Division 6 actually. We still have it in the Service Division 7. So in here we had the debutant in Equa and the Ferrari winning from P3 on the grid, with Stuab in P2, Mason Rott in P3, Axe Flasher in P4, Moss in P5, Zion in P6, Leo Hamilton in P7, Matthew in P8, Blast Alpha in P9, and Browns the Buns in P10. In the Drivers' Championship, Sion leads the way with 144 points. He jumps Axe Flasher, who sits on 132.5 points. Leo Hamilton then on 124 points in P3, and Gaza Buchanan on 123.5. Stoop then on 112.5, with Moss on 103. Mike Reed then on 96, dropping down the positions, and Browns the Buns on 94, with Logan on 93, and Lucinio, also called Ace Guy, on 65. In the Constructors' Championship of this division, with McLaren still leading on 238 points, but are closely followed by Williams, who jump up into P2 again on 234 points, and Haas on 228.5. Ferrari then on 204.5 points in P4, and Alpine on 144.5, with Alfa Romeo on 143 and Mercedes on 137. So between those three, it's very, very close. Red Bull then on 124.5. AlphaTauri going above the 100 with 100.5, and Aston Martin on 52.5 points. So after this weekend in Portugal, another new winner. Sion also in the championship lead still. So he has lost a couple of points actually to Axe Flasher. But then yet again, Stuart has gained a bit. Mason Rott got pole position again. So yeah, it's still mixed up nicely, but it seems like slowly that the gap between drivers are increasing, aren't they, Blade? And now drivers, you can really see who is who is the big deal for the championship and who is just like was able to keep in with it within the gap until now. But now it's getting tougher race per race to keep the form up.
Yeah, certainly. I still think it's incredibly close. So the people, I think, particularly, I suppose, the top four are very close, I think, and I think
Yeah,
the
yeah,
top
no, definitely.
six probably are still in it. So, or maybe Mike Reed because he's been doing well. But yeah, um, it's um. It's obviously all very close, but yeah, like you say, I think the favourites are starting to emerge. Sion and X Flash are both very quick. Who won again? Equor, no. He's not in the fight. It's, Stewart, or whatever his name is.
Mhm.
Also, good weekend for him. I think I think he's in a shot for it. I can't. Was he in the lead of the championship earlier this season? I can't
He was
remember.
in the lead, but then he was away for
Yeah,
like 3 weeks. So
yeah. So
next
that's
week,
ideal. But I think he does have the pace then to be able to challenge the top two. Leo
yeah.
Hamilton's been having some great weekends as well. I think
I mean, I remember
obviously
Stuart going on holiday and saying he's gonna be away for 3 weeks. And Sion said, yeah, he wishes him a good holiday. I mean, looking at the table, that makes sense completely, because that's where
yeah.
those points have come from. I mean, I'm sure Stuart had a good holiday, but if I could call myself GRL champion at the end of the season, might as well shorten that holiday a little bit, no? But you now got to have a few priorities. But I think GRL Division 7 Championship is just simply unmatched. It looks like it's a McLaren Championship as well, because Kieran won last season, now Sion and McLaren once again. So if we want a replica of Bright, we need to wait Gazza Buchanan to suddenly win races. So yeah, well, we're having parallels to last season. It still looks obviously very close, but you have those people like Browns the Buns, Logan, who drop off now slightly. Moss has had a good couple of weeks. Well, he won a couple of weeks ago. This time he finished P5. He gained points on his teammate, the championship lead, and Sion. Archie also won the race. I mean, because looking at this Constructors Championship, we said how close the drivers are in the driver standings. The Constructors is as close, really. If you look, McLaren lead the way by 4 points from Williams and Haas, who are 6 points behind them. So also here, I think it's probably all to play for, right?
It definitely seems very close. You've got, what is it, 33.5 points separating P1 to P4, and then a massive 60 points all the way to Alpine and P5. But even then, with how close this division is, it could really go either way for the top four. Looking down at the bottom of the table, AlphaTauri. Obviously, not what I like to see, but at the same time, we've had Martinez scoring and Lino down in P18, but did qualify P5. So perhaps with a little bit more race pace or a little bit more practice on race pace, we could absolutely see them up there if they're coming back for us.
For sure.
Um,
I mean, you have Marley, who's usually turning up quite often. Martinez was the reserve, and Lino came down from Division 6, that was formerly. So Lino, as you said, qualified P5, and I think it's safe to say that in this division, at times it's more about surviving than actually having the stellar race pace. So I think if Lino can maybe avoid a couple of mistakes as well and keep his nose clean, he's certainly going to be within a shot for a top 10 result, as you said. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens in Division 7 next. Maybe it closes up next season again, and we're gonna have completely different runners at the top. So yeah, that's certainly gonna be very interesting to watch. But that's basically all the races and championships covered for now. But only the thing is left that we all wake up for on Mondays, which is the overall Constructors' Championship. As we mentioned last week, we have Mercedes leading on 1,575 points, and Alfa remains second on 1,371. Alpine then on 1,188, ahead of AlphaTauri in 1,180.5. Ferrari done on 1,163.5, 1 point ahead of Haas. McLaren then on 1,138, so staying in contention for that P5, with Red Bull on 1,096.5. Aston Martin on 878.5 in P9, just ahead now of Williams on 847. Last week, when we were sitting here talking about the bottom two, we said Aston Martin have really gapped Williams a lot in those recent weeks. I mean, Blade, what's happened there? I mean, Williams have just started to creep into Aston Martin's lead, which is, I guess, good for their morale.
Yeah, well, it's starting to finally work the project, you know. You know, if they had hype still in their team, they'd be scoring over 100 points. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, obviously closing a lot on their main rivals. You know, Aston Martin, who well, not for the first time for sure, has had an absolutely shocking weekend, really. So yeah, I mean, it's still on the battle for the wooden spoon. It's still on. So yeah,
Well, if you finish P9, I'm gonna send every one of all of you a spoon, just because you finished ninth in the overall constructors. That's the price. Well, looking at the others in this championship, I mean, Mercedes, I think, have scored the most points this weekend. They've extended the gap to Alfa Romeo. Alpine did not score much either compared to Aston Martin. I think they actually scored less. AlphaTauri scored around 70. Also not a great weekend, just a little bit better. Closed the gap down a little bit though. Ferrari, on the other hand, as well, not amazing, but was enough really. McLaren then, on probably one of the better weekends, almost 100 points. I mean, but looking at it, it seems like we had it last season with Williams and Aston Martin, where Williams, I think, took the lead for one weekend off Alpine, and then Alpine really chose violence and they gapped them. And this is basically what Mercedes is doing now, right?
yeah, pretty much. I think obviously Alfa Romeo were scoring a lot of points at a little earlier in the season, but it seems like they just couldn't maintain it. Unlike Mercedes, who they've continued gaining points over everyone. So yeah, I think it's looking good for Mercedes. We all these teams, all these divisions, and they're still outscoring everyone else. It's pretty impressive. So and for I think is that 2 weeks in a row? I'm not too sure, but looking at it maybe. So yeah, I think it's going to take a bit of a disaster. Well, I mean, obviously there's a lot of rounds left, but I can't see too much going wrong for Mercedes with how strong. I think obviously Div 2 is going great for them. Div 4 as well is going extremely well. There's probably some others that I'm forgetting. but
Yeah, it's
and they're not
just
really, they're
it
not
seems
really
to
doing
be enough.
badly in any divisions either. So
Seems to be enough overall just right now. They're maintaining the gap, but yeah, let's have a look also on the battle for P3 again. I mean, AlphaTauri and Alpine have switched every week recently. I mean, Aventicus, you failed. Your team has failed to switch positions again and move up into P3. But I guess the positives you can take from this week is that you at least gained quite a bit on Alpine, correct?
Yeah, we've closed the gap now to 8 points, but even then, we still have to worry about Ferrari and Haas behind us. We've got Ferrari about 17 points behind, and Haas only 1 point behind them. So it's not just Alpine we have to worry about now at this stage. Definitely, P3 is still the goal, but we'll see how it goes. Really.
Yeah, I mean, if there wasn't Mercedes and Alfa Romeo, this would be an amazing championship for sure.
Mm.
Especially as McLaren is only another 30-ish points behind. So yeah, if you just look at the overall constructors championship again, I mean, Gente Bar still the driver with the most points scored at 210. So in the drivers Mercedes there certainly have the advantage, while Mercedes just have the most podiums. They've got 35 now, with Alpine on 28, AlphaTauri on 26. But then at the bottom, only Aston Martin on 13. I mean, this is what those teams are just losing compared to the others. Also, on the race wins, Haas and McLaren at the top with 11 race wins, and AlphaTauri on 10. While teams like Ferrari only have 5 or Alpine have 7. So seemingly that's what's hurting them right now. So yeah, as said, if Mercedes and Alfa Romeo could ideally lose a bit of ground to the others, that would be perfect. But Blade, what do you think? Does it seem like Alpine, AlphaTauri, Ferrari, Haas, all the way down to McLaren are just taking points off each other right now instead of just gaining on the top two?
yeah, well, if um, if every single one of Mercedes and Alfa Romeo's drivers do what AlphaTauri did in Division One at Round One, then I think the championship is still on. So
God, I
yeah,
hope.
I think yeah, it's gonna be pretty difficult. I mean, uh, obviously, I think they probably, at least anyone other than Alfa Romeo, shouldn't really be focusing on taking the championship overall constructors title because, I mean, they're 400 points behind, which is pretty crazy. So, maybe I don't know what the maximum amount of points that can be scored in the weekend is, but I mean, I don't think we'll ever see one team score maximum points in every division and Mercedes scores zero or even negative. I don't think that will ever happen. So,
Maximum of points is 282. So if Mercedes just don't turn up,
yeah,
they're still gonna lead by around one.
they would. I mean, they wouldn't even be that far ahead of Alfa Romeo. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it's got to take something absolutely catastrophic for for Mercedes not to well, I'm not going to say not to win this, but to not finish in the top two. Uh, yeah, something incredibly bad would have to happen. So, yeah. I think there's more chances of Aston Martin and Williams beating Red Bull than that happening, which is also extremely low in itself. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, as said, overall constructors, it's just boiling and brewing right now. We're just waiting for the last few races. Maybe Alfa Romeo can make a huge step suddenly, and they're about to attack Mercedes. But
Yeah.
currently, Mercedes seems untouchable. So we just rather focus on the fight for P3 or as said, for the battle for the wooden spoon for P9 between Aston Martin and Williams, who were fighting for second best at this point last season. Now they're fighting for second worst. But, well, I guess that's how quickly it can change within a full season. But yeah, that's basically this podcast for the Portuguese Grand Prix wrapped up. So thank you to Blade and the Venicus for joining me tonight. I mean, next up we're gonna have the French Grand Prix at Le Castellet with sprint weekend as well. If I look at the calendar, I don't think we have too many sprints left after France.
This one and then Miami.
Oh yeah, Miami. Yeah, that's also going to be very interesting. But yeah, two tracks where it should be quite interesting when it comes to overtaking. France with a couple of straights, decent overtaking opportunities, maybe quarters flying into a wall as we saw last season. So we'll see what happens at the track of Le Baguette. So that's going to be very interesting for sure. The top four divisions will be streamed again. So yeah, we'll see you next week for the podcast of the French Grand Prix. And until then, let's say we see you when GRL returns.